Dr. Ilara Voss tightened her harness as the landing pod shuddered through Xylaris Prime's thin atmosphere. Outside the small viewport, the planet stretched in endless shades of green, mist rising from dense jungles that seemed older than time itself. This was humanity's first manned expedition to Xylaris in over a century, and every scientist aboard felt the weight of history pressing against their shoulders. Ilara's heart raced with excitement and fear. She had studied alien species her entire life, but nothing prepared her for standing on a world untouched by humans for 105 years. Legends from old probes spoke of the Xiliens, a fierce alien tribe that had survived in the jungles long before humans even mapped the planet. These creatures were said to be dangerous, unpredictable, and territorial. The pod's landing gear hit the soft, mossy ground with a gentle thud. The jungle seemed to breathe around her, enormous leaves trembling in the windless air. Stepping out, Ilara felt the sticky humidity wrap around her. She adjusted her gloves and helmet, scanning the horizon with her sensor. For a moment, everything was quiet. Too quiet. She ventured cautiously, recording every sound, every shadow that moved between the trees. Then she saw it. The Xiliens. They emerged like ghosts, their tall, lean bodies covered in dark mottled skin. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, tracking her every move. They had sharp claws and teeth, designed for survival in this untamed world. One wrong step could make her their prey. Ilara froze, calculating her options. She remembered the survival strategies she had practiced. Move slowly, avoid direct eye contact, and observe. But the Xiliens did not hesitate. They crouched low, their movements precise, almost predatory. Her heart pounded as she sprinted, weaving between massive tree roots and thick vines. The aliens pursued with frightening speed, leaping over obstacles that would have stopped any human. Ilara darted into a small ravine, her boots slipping on the wet ground. She ducked behind a fallen tree trunk, holding her breath as the creatures scanned the area. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Slowly, the Xiliens lost interest, moving on to other parts of the jungle. Ilara allowed herself a quiet exhale. She knew she had only survived because of her knowledge, her planning, and a bit of luck. Shivering from fear and sweat, she pressed onward, looking for shelter. After what felt like an eternity, she discovered a small structure, partially hidden under vines and moss. It looked ancient, clearly built by Xiliens long ago. She slipped inside, examining the walls for traps or dangers. It was empty, but it offered safety from the immediate threat outside. Ilara sat down, taking out her datapad to record her findings. She noted the tribe's behaviors, the way they hunted, the patterns she had seen. She realized that understanding these creatures was her only hope. The Xiliens were intelligent, territorial, and adaptable. She had to be smarter than them to survive. As night fell, the jungle transformed. Strange sounds echoed between the trees, screeches, clicks, and low growls. The alien world seemed alive, watching her. Ilara lit a small lamp, careful not to attract attention, and reviewed her supplies. Food was minimal, and she knew she could not survive long without finding more. The next day, she ventured cautiously outside the shelter. The jungle seemed calmer in the daylight, but she knew danger could appear at any moment. Moving slowly, she observed the Xiliens from a distance. She noticed something remarkable. The tribe had rules. Certain areas were clearly sacred, marked by carved stones and symbols. Others were hunting grounds, fiercely guarded. Ilara realized she could use this knowledge. If she avoided sacred zones and stayed on the edges of their territory, she might survive longer. She began crafting small tools from fallen branches and stones, simple traps and signals to help her navigate the dangerous jungle. Every day was a careful balance of observation, movement, and survival. One afternoon, while exploring near a river, she stumbled upon something unexpected. A small, broken device half buried in mud. It was old, clearly left by humans long before her arrival. She carefully dug it out, brushing away layers of dirt. It was a communication relay, one that had probably not worked for decades. Even though it was useless now, it gave her hope. Humans had been here before. She was not alone in this strange world, even if centuries had passed. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes snapped her attention back to danger. The Xiliens had returned. A group of 5 moved with precision, encircling her. Ilara's mind raced. She knew running could be fatal. Instead, she froze, recalling the behaviors she had observed. Slowly, she raised her hands, not in surrender, but in a way that mimicked their ritual gestures. The creatures paused, studying her. Her heart thumped violently, but she stayed calm. After tense moments, they backed away slightly, watching her but not attacking. Ilara realized she had made a small breakthrough. The Zillions were intelligent enough to recognize signals, even from an outsider. She smiled faintly. Humanity had survived in countless harsh worlds, and perhaps here too cleverness and patience could prevail. Over the next few days, Ilara continued her cautious exploration. She discovered more about the Zillions' daily life, the way they hunted, gathered, and communicated with each other. She found a young alien, smaller than the rest, who seemed curious rather than aggressive. The creature watched her silently, mimicking some of her movements. It gave her a small measure of hope, but the jungle was unforgiving. One night, a massive predator, unlike anything she had seen before, attacked near her shelter. She barely escaped, scrambling into the ruins and using her traps to slow it down. Her heart raced as she realized the full danger of this planet. Survival would not come from strength alone. It would require intelligence, patience, and adaptability. By the end of the week, Ilara had managed to stay alive, recording every observation and building a rough understanding of the Zillion society. She had narrowly escaped death more than once, but each close call made her more determined. She began planning her next move, not just to survive, but to understand these aliens, to learn their ways, and perhaps to communicate with them. As she rested one night looking out at the endless green canopy, she whispered to herself, "Humans survived deserts, oceans, and frozen worlds. We can survive this too." Her voice was quiet but full of determination. Little did she know the Zillions were watching more closely than ever, and her journey of survival, understanding, and eventual connection with them was only beginning. Ilara woke to the soft glow of Xylaris Prime's twin suns, their light filtering through the dense jungle canopy. The events of the past week weighed heavily on her, but she felt stronger, sharper. She had survived encounters with the Zillions, navigated their territory, and learned their patterns. Now her goal was not only survival, it was understanding. She watched from her shelter as the young Zillion, the curious one, moved among the tribe. It studied her movements, mimicking her gestures and watching her every action. Ilara knew she had a chance to build a bridge. Humans had always been survivors, thinkers, and adapters, and now she would prove it here. Carefully, she stepped out into the open, holding her hands in a slow, deliberate gesture she had learned from observing the tribe's rituals. The young Zillion froze and stared. She spoke softly, letting her voice carry with calm authority. "I am not your enemy." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the young alien tilted its head and slowly stepped closer. Ilara kept her movements smooth, patient, and predictable. This small act of understanding was a breakthrough. She smiled quietly to herself. Patience, intelligence, and careful observation, human traits, were her greatest weapons. Over the next few days, Ilara began establishing a routine. She left small, harmless gifts near the tribe's territory. Water and carved shells, fruit from the jungle, and simple tools made from vines and stones. The young Zillion observed, and eventually the others noticed too. Slowly, they stopped seeing her as prey. But survival on Xylaris Prime was not only about earning trust. One morning, as Ilara collected samples from a nearby stream, she noticed dark clouds forming over the jungle. The wind carried an unusual scent. Predators were on the move, and the tribe's territory would soon be in danger. Ilara acted quickly. Using her knowledge of the jungle and her small collection of tools, she set up warning signals, simple markers and noisemakers that could alert the tribe to danger. She moved carefully, avoiding the sacred zones she had learned to respect. That night, the predators arrived. Enormous, multi-limbed creatures that had hunted the Zillions for generations. The tribe panicked at first, but Ilara's signals gave them time to react. She guided the young Zillion and its family to safer ground, demonstrating through gestures where to hide and how to protect themselves. The Zillions watched in awe as she used simple traps and clever tools to slow the predators. Fallen logs, sharpened sticks, and clever positioning allowed the tribe to survive the attack. By the time the predators retreated, the Zillions were shaken but unharmed. The tribe gathered around her, their eyes glowing with curiosity and a new understanding. Ilara realized that her actions had changed the Zillions' perception of humans forever. They were no longer merely a threat. They were capable allies. Ilara spent the following weeks learning more about the Xylian society. She observed their rituals, the way they cared for their young, and the subtle ways they communicated. She began to respond, mimicking their gestures, creating simple signs, and showing that she could understand and respect their ways. The young Xilian became her constant companion, following her cautiously but without fear. She named it Tali, and it seemed to understand her in ways no human had expected. Together they explored parts of the jungle previously unknown, discovering hidden caves, strange plants, and ancient carvings that told the story of the Xilian's long history. One day, deep in the jungle, Ilara discovered the remains of another human expedition. Tools, broken equipment, and faded datapads told a story of explorers who had arrived decades ago and vanished. The tribe's ancestors had likely encountered them, and some of the tribe's traditions seemed to reflect those encounters. Ilara realized that humans had touched this world before, but never with the knowledge, patience, or respect she brought. She was the first to survive, to understand, and to connect. This was not just survival, it was triumph. Humanity had once again shown its strength through intelligence, courage, and empathy. As the twin suns rose high one morning, Ilara watched the Xilians from a hilltop. They moved with confidence now, unafraid of her presence. The tribe had accepted her not as a conqueror but as a protector, an observer, and a friend. She had turned fear into trust, danger into cooperation, and isolation into alliance. Her thoughts turned to the future. She had data to collect, samples to record, and reports to send back to humanity. But she also had a new mission, to ensure that humans and Xilians could coexist peacefully. The jungle was vast, full of secrets and dangers, but she was ready. She had survived the deadliest aspects of the planet and had shown that human ingenuity and empathy could overcome even the most alien challenges. The young Xilian, Tali, approached her and placed a small carved stone in her hands, a gesture of trust and friendship. Ilara smiled, feeling a warmth she had never expected in this alien world. She whispered softly, "We are stronger together." Days turned into weeks, and Ilara continued to explore, record, and learn. She established a small base near the tribe, careful not to disrupt their way of life. She shared her knowledge with them in ways they could understand, teaching simple strategies to avoid predators, showing safe ways to gather food, and helping them protect their territory more effectively. The Xilians responded with respect and curiosity. They began to imitate some of her techniques, and she marveled at their intelligence. Humans and aliens working together, a fragile but powerful alliance. She realized that this was the essence of humanity, the ability to observe, learn, adapt, and survive, not just for oneself, but for others as well. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the jungle in gold and shadow, Ilara stood on a cliff overlooking the valley. She felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. She had arrived as a stranger, nearly devoured, facing a hostile alien tribe. Now she stood as a survivor, a teacher, and a friend. Humanity had triumphed not through strength alone, but through cleverness, patience, and empathy. Ilara knew the journey was far from over. The jungle still held many mysteries. The Xilians still had much to teach her, and humanity had much to learn from this world. But she also knew one undeniable truth. Humans could face the unknown and prevail. As night fell and the stars of Xylaris Prime shone above, she whispered once more, "We survive. We adapt. We endure." And for the first time she felt the jungle not as a threat, but as a world where humans could belong. Her heart swelled with pride and determination. Humanity had shown its strength again. On this distant alien world, the first step toward peace, understanding, and lasting coexistence had been taken. And Ilara Voss would be the bridge.